Imagine making $94,000 a year, living in a nice suburban house, driving a decent car, and still lying awake at 2 a.m., wondering if you'll ever be able to retire. That's exactly what happened to David at age 47. He wasn't reckless. He didn't have secret debt. He just did everything basically fine for 15 years, and it quietly destroyed his future. What if the same thing is happening to you right now, without you even realizing it? Not because he'd done something catastrophically wrong, not because he had secret debt or a gambling problem or some massive financial mistake in his past. He didn't sleep because he realized that doing everything basically fine for the last 15 years had quietly put him on a path toward a retirement that would be, at best, anxious, at worst, dependent. And he had no idea how it happened. That's the thing nobody talks about. It's not the people who made obvious mistakes who end up in trouble. It's the people who did everything mostly right and still ended up wrong. And almost always, almost without exception, the place where it tipped, the window where the whole trajectory of their retirement was determined, was their 40s. But here's where it gets interesting. Because the way your 40s shape your retirement isn't what most financial content tells you. It's not about maxing your 401k, or eliminating debt, or following some 7-step plan. Those things matter, but they're not the real mechanism. The real mechanism is something quieter and a lot more dangerous. And by the time most people understand it, they're already past the point where it hurts the most. I want to walk you through exactly what's happening. Not as a lecture, but because I've watched this play out across hundreds of real financial situations over 3 decades. And there are patterns so consistent, they're almost predictable. And if you're anywhere between 25 and 45 right now, what I'm about to tell you is either going to confirm something you already sensed, or it's going to reframe something you thought you understood. Either way, you need to hear it. Here's the first thing that almost nobody realizes. Your 40s are not the middle of your financial life. Mathematically, emotionally, they feel like the middle. You're halfway through your career. You're probably halfway through paying off your house. Your kids are halfway grown. Everything about the decade feels like a midpoint. But in terms of compound growth, in terms of the actual mechanics of how retirement wealth is built, your 40s are closer to the end than the beginning. Think about that for a second, because it changes everything. If you're 43 right now and you plan to retire at 65, you have 22 years left. That sounds like a long time. But the money you put in at 43 only has 22 years to compound. The money you put in at 33 had 32 years. The money you put in at 25 had 40 years. This is not a small difference. At a 7% average annual return, a dollar invested at 25 becomes $14.97 by 65. That same dollar invested at 43 becomes $4.43. You're not getting a second chance at that gap. It closed already, quietly, while you were living your life. This is the part that should worry you. Not because it means you're doomed, but because most people treat their 40s like they still have the flexibility of their 30s. They put off the hard decisions. They tell themselves they'll get serious next year, when the car is paid off, when the kids are out of activities, when work settles down. And every single year they wait, the math gets harder in ways that cannot be reversed. But that's not even the real problem. The real problem is what happens to spending in your 40s, because this is where everything starts to break. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, in a way that feels completely reasonable at every individual step. In your 40s, your income is probably the highest it's ever been, and your lifestyle has been creeping up alongside it for years. The house got bigger. The cars got newer. The kids started doing sports and music and travel teams. You started going to nicer restaurants because you can afford it now, and you've earned it. And frankly, you're exhausted, and you deserve a decent meal. None of these things, individually, are wrong. But together, they do something insidious. They make saving feel optional. Not in a reckless way, in a rationalized way. There's always a reason why this year is the year you'll build up savings next year. The HVAC unit needs replacing. One kid needs braces. You're doing a kitchen renovation that will add value to the house. The vacation was the first real family trip in 3 years, and everyone needed it. All of this is real. All of it is understandable. And all of it is quietly compounding into a crisis. The average American household in their 40s saves less than 8% of their income for retirement. The number recommended by financial planners to actually retire with dignity is 15%. That gap, that 7%, doesn't sound catastrophic, but run it through a compound calculator over 20 years, and it's the difference between retiring comfortably and retiring and immediately starting to worry about whether your money will last. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. I want you to think about someone you know, a friend, a sibling, a colleague, who you would describe as doing well financially. They have a good job, a nice house, seem put together. Now I want you to guess what percentage of their paycheck they're actually saving for retirement. Not what they have in their account. What they're actively contributing right now, each month, as a percentage of gross income. Because in my experience, when people actually do that calculation, not guess, but actually calculate it, the number is almost always lower than they thought. Often dramatically lower. And this is where the social comparison problem kicks in hardest. We judge financial health by visible signals. The car, the neighborhood, the vacations people post, the kitchen renovation. None of those things tell you anything about what's actually happening in someone's financial life. The couple with the beautiful house and the annual trip to Europe might be carrying $40,000 in personal debt and saving almost nothing for retirement. And you'd have no idea, because none of that is visible. What you see looks like success. What's actually happening might be a slow-motion crisis. But here's the brutal part. You might be doing the same thing. Your neighbors might be looking at your car and your house and your life and making exactly the same assumption about you. We are all performing financial stability to each other while privately wondering if we're falling behind. Now I want to introduce you to someone else. Her name is Sandra. Sandra is 44. She makes $78,000 a year, less than David. She drives a 6-year-old Honda. She hasn't done a kitchen renovation. Her vacations are camping trips and road trips, not flights and hotels. From the outside, she does not look like someone who's winning. But Sandra has been putting 18% of her gross income into her retirement accounts since she was 31. She has no car payment. She has no personal debt. And she has, right now, at 44, a retirement account balance of $340,000, plus a small brokerage account she started 3 years ago. By 65, if she does nothing but continue what she's already doing, no raises, no windfalls, no lucky investments, she will retire with somewhere between 1.4 and 1.8 million in today's dollars. She will not worry about money in retirement. She will not have to choose between prescriptions and groceries. She will not be dependent on her children. David, if he doesn't change course, will retire with somewhere between $380,000 and $520,000. In a country where the average retirement lasts 18 to 20 years, and where healthcare costs for a couple in retirement now exceed $315,000 on average, according to Fidelity's most recent research, that number is not freedom. That number is math that doesn't work. What separated Sandra from David was not intelligence, not income, not luck. It was a series of decisions made quietly, consistently, across a span of years. Decisions that mostly happened in their 30s and early 40s, during the exact window when compounding was still their ally. And this is where everything starts to look different. Because here's what I haven't told you yet. David's situation, as bleak as those numbers sound, is still fixable. Not easily, not without real sacrifice, but fixable. Because the cruelest truth about your 40s is also the most hopeful one. This is the last decade where the changes you make can still significantly alter your retirement trajectory. Not a little, significantly. A 43-year-old who increases their savings rate by 8% and keeps it there for 20 years doesn't just improve their retirement modestly, they can transform it. But, and this is the part that most financial content glosses over, the changes that are required are not small tweaks. They're structural. And most people don't make structural changes because structural changes are uncomfortable. And there's always a reason why now isn't quite the right time. Let me tell you what David did when he didn't sleep that night. He didn't panic. He didn't go watch YouTube videos at 2 a.m. and convince himself to put all his money in crypto. What he did was this. He sat at his kitchen table and he wrote down, honestly, every dollar his family spent in the previous month. Not estimated, not rounded. Every dollar. He used his credit card statements and his bank statements, and he categorized everything. And after about an hour, he found something. He found $2,300 a month in spending that, when he looked at it clearly, he could not directly connect to his quality of life or his happiness. Subscriptions he'd forgotten. Restaurants they went to out of habit, not enjoyment. A car payment on a vehicle one of them didn't really need. A gym membership nobody used. Regular Amazon purchases that felt like necessities in the moment and were irrelevant a week later. Small things. Medium things. None of them outrageous on their own. Together, they were $2,300 a month, $27,600 a year. That was essentially evaporating. He didn't cut all of it. That's not the point. But he redirected $1,200 of it, about half, into his retirement contributions and a small taxable brokerage account. That one change, made at 47, if maintained until 65, adds approximately $490,000 to his retirement balance at a 7% return. Not a windfall, not a gamble, a decision made late, later than it should have been, but still in time. And here's what almost nobody talks about when they give retirement advice. The biggest obstacle to making that decision isn't knowledge. You probably already know you should be saving more. You've known it for years. The biggest obstacle is the gap between understanding something intellectually and feeling the urgency viscerally, in your chest, in the way you make actual daily decisions. Most people don't close that gap until something forces them to. A health scare. A friend who retires and immediately struggles. A parent who runs out of money in their 70s and has to move in with family. These are the moments that make the abstract real. And the terrible thing is that if you wait for one of those moments to motivate you, you're often already in a position where the math is harder, the options are fewer, and the sacrifice required is larger. This is why the 40s are decisive. Not because retirement is close. It isn't. Not yet. But because the combination of factors that determines your retirement outcome are all simultaneously in play right now. Your income is high enough to save meaningfully. Your time horizon is still long enough for compound growth to work in your favor. And your financial habits are set enough that changing them requires intention. It won't happen accidentally. After your 50s, the calculus shifts again. The income might still be there, but the compounding window is shorter. The options narrow. The margin for error shrinks. What was uncomfortable in your 40s becomes painful in your 50s, and sometimes devastating in your 60s. So let me be direct about something that most financial content dances around. If you are in your 40s right now, this is not a drill. This is not a someday I should think about this situation. The decisions you make or don't make over the next 5 to 10 years will determine the quality of the last 20 to 30 years of your life. That is not a metaphor. That is arithmetic. And yet, here's what I want you to hold on to. The people who dramatically change their retirement outcome in their 40s are not the ones who suddenly get wealthy or get lucky. They're the ones who get honest. Honest about what they're actually spending. Honest about what they're actually saving. Honest about the gap between where they are and where they need to be. And honest about the fact that closing that gap requires real choices, not just intention. David called me about 3 weeks after that sleepless night. He'd already made the changes, increased his 401k contribution, canceled 3 subscriptions, sold the second car, and used the payment savings to start a taxable brokerage account. Not dramatic. Not life-altering in any visible, external way. He didn't move to a smaller house. He didn't stop going out to dinner. He just stopped leaking money in ways he hadn't been paying attention to, and redirected it towards something that would matter enormously in 18 years. He said something that I think about a lot. He said, I feel like I've been doing this thing where I kept telling myself things were fine because nothing felt urgently wrong. And now I realize that's exactly how things go quietly wrong. That sentence is the thing I want you to sit with. Because the financial situations that end badly rarely involve obvious warning signs. They involve years of things that felt fine. Not great, not terrible, just fine. Slowly crystallizing into a reality that becomes undeniable only when it's much harder to change. Your 40s are the last decade where you have enough time, enough income, and enough agency to write a genuinely different story. Not a perfect story, not a story without sacrifice, but a story where the ending, the part where you stop working and have to live entirely off what you built, doesn't keep you awake at night. The question isn't whether you know what to do. You probably do. The question is whether you're willing to look honestly at the numbers, sit with the discomfort of what you see, and make the structural changes that your future self will be grateful for, even if your present self finds it inconvenient. David is sleeping again now. He told me that too. The number in his account is still not where it should be. He knows that. But for the first time in years, it's moving in the right direction. And he's the one steering it. That's a different feeling. And it's available to you right now, in this decade, while the window is still open. But the window doesn't stay open forever. What happens after it closes is a story most people don't want to find themselves in.